Peace and love, everyone. Welcome to my channel. If you're new, please like and subscribe. And I want to bid you all good evening on this Thursday. It's been I took a brief break from doing lives, but I'm back into the groove of things. I had to work on some things that were happening, but I am so excited to be here. And this is a very, very auspicious week and very special week because we had a new moon, we had an eclipse, we had two major events in the lunar calendar. The Chinese New Year was this week on I think Monday or Tuesday it started, and then Ramadan started. So Ramadan Mubarak, everyone. And also we're in the Lent season, and all of these timelines are happening together. So we got a lot of great energy out there, and let's use it for good, family. Let's take this time to um, do a lot of self reflection and use this season, this new moon, new lunar year, new lunar cycle. Let's use this time to do a lot of self reflection, repentance, strengthening ourselves, going within, working on polishing our own light so that we can shine brighter and be the best versions of ourselves. Let's use this time to purify ourselves from all negativity and what is holding us back and what no longer serves us, because these things not only do they not longer no longer serve us and not serving humanity, not serving the planet, not serving anything. So let's let that stuff go, let it go, and make room for new energy, new positive energies, new exciting projects in your life. Make room for you to be a better person, and spread more love and peace on the planet, which is what we all need. So with that said, let's move into tonight's topic. Tonight we are talking about the time of great revealing. Revelations, the root word is to reveal, and we are in a really unique time where a lot of things are being revealed. We're in the time of great awakening. The awakening process has been ongoing and been going on for years, but part of the awakening, as people awaken to higher levels of consciousness, in order to move there, you also have to remove the things that have been blocking the growth towards the higher levels of consciousness. And in order to move to those higher levels, you have to rid yourself of and release the low vibrating things that have been keeping people from ascending to higher levels. And a lot of that low vibrating stuff is lies, simple lies, lies, deception, deceit, um, trickery. We've been under a sleep spell for a long time. We have transitioned out of this, the Kali Yuga, as some people call it, or I call it the time of great spiritual darkness. It's over. We are in a whole new paradigm now, a whole new time shift. And so many people were kept deceived and confused and misdirected for so long. I mean, the more you go down the rabbit hole and discover um deceptions, mass deceptions, the more you find out what you've been deceived by. I mean, I'm really literally, the more you go down the rabbit hole, the more you discover, and the more that you see that it's so much more to know that hasn't been taught or has been hidden or kept secret, or just been people have just been deceived. And it's on every level. It's like, it's almost like living in a web of lies, or drowning in a sea of lies, and you're those of us who no longer want to drown in that sea of lies. Once you start climbing out of the water and you hold on to the beach and you pull yourself up, and you crawl your way out, and you look back and you're like, how did I get out of there? But I made it. You had the willpower to get out of the sea of lies. Or if you're trapped in the web of lies, if you will, you have to be the one to break that web and bring yourself out of it. And you bring yourself out of it with the truth. There is a saying: the truth hurts the guilty, because the guilty are the ones that are benefiting from the lies. So a guilty person who has told lies, deceived people, they don't want the truth to come out because the truth exposes them and exposes what they're doing. So they're going to do everything they can to protect that lie. They will tell another lie to cover up that one. They will try to demonize or tell people lies about the person that reveals the truth, or they'll try to deceive other people and create a false narrative because they don't want people to know the truth. And so anybody that exposes the truth will be called names, will be accused of wrongdoing. They will try to gaslight that person that is revealing the truth, or gaslight the people who are listening to it, because they don't want to shatter that image of themselves, that they are in fact the one that told the lie or was being deceitful. And deceit never has a good outcome. Family, there's never a right way to do wrong. And whenever you tell lies, you have to tell another one to cover that one. um the more you say, the more you make up. You got to keep telling more. But when you say the truth or speak the truth, there's no need to cover up anything or hide or distract, because the truth is there. It's clear and it's evident. And so that's what is happening right before our eyes, especially here. Well, it's not even something that is limited to just the United States, because a lot of the problems that are going on and a lot of the stuff that's being revealed is affecting everyone, because we're all in this together, believe it or not. So it's not just an American thing. It's not just a um, female thing or whatever. It's universal, and it's you're seeing that everybody had their hand in um this situation that is taking place. So this is a time of great revealing, and you're going to be seeing if you've been paying attention, with eyes that can see and ears that can hear and a supreme mind that can think. Things have been There's been a with the great awakening that's been taking place in the last several years. There's been a lot of things that have been revealed, a lot of knowledge that was kept hidden and secret for so long is out in the open. It's been exposed. You have more access to it. This is the information age, as they call it. And with that information, there's an abundance of information. We have, not only do we have books filled with libraries. I grew up, spending many hours at the library reading, checking out books, looking up things. But not only that, we have the World Wide Web, which keeps us connected to so many things, so much information, and it's at your fingertips, literally. You just punch in something or punch it in on your phone and you can look up stuff. So people have access to things more. And also, we're in the era of, I call it the tell all era. When I was growing up, I was raised by people that came from a very different generation than I came from. And they had this sense of, you don't talk, you don't tell, you don't, what goes, and I heard this everywhere I went, whether I heard it at school from adults when I was growing. I'm talking about when I was growing up. So you heard it from the older generation and my grandmother's generation. So two generations before me, you heard, you don't talk about what goes on at home, you keep secrets, um you mind your business. What goes on with other people has nothing to do with you, and vice versa. You don't talk, you don't tell. Certain things you don't talk about, whatever, you just deal with it, you pray on it, in silence, and it'll be fixed, somehow, some way. And things that were hurting people, or that really needed to be talked about, or toxic behaviors, were normalized or kept a secret, or swept under the rug, or minimized, or people dismissed your feelings or whatever. So it was a lot of that, and that seemed to be the norm, that you don't talk about, you don't expose people, especially people who are in authority figures or have certain titles, conferred titles. Someone gave them that title, or some people are bold enough to give them own selves certain titles, but you don't expose certain things, especially if it's something that will cause a scandal or whatnot. And then when I was growing up, we had the era of, I think that's when the tell all era started, the talk shows and people getting on shows and telling all the things that they were told not to talk about, and it became commonplace for this. And then people started writing tell all books. The older generation will wait decades before they wrote a book to expose, any wrongdoing, or they waited many years later to talk about things that happened. Um, they didn't do it when it was happening. They did it later. But then the era I grew up in, people just started telling things. People started exposing um, secrets. People started speaking up when there was some wrongdoing going on, and we were being encouraged to do so. We were being encouraged not to keep harmful secrets that protected abusers and predators. We were told, come forward, speak your truth, and a lot of people did, and they got, demonized for it, or they got accused of things. And then some people chose to remain silent because they didn't want the backlash, they didn't want the criticism, the harassment, and the mistreatment for coming forward. Because when you come forward and expose lies and liars and predators, sometimes there's consequences for that. And those consequences can be very serious. And a lot of people didn't want those. And others were like, I don't care. I'm still going to tell it, because the more I remain silent about this, the worse the problem's going to get. And this is what we have right now. There's been a lot of talk about certain people in uh, some files that have come out, and I involving some nefarious, unscrupulous behaviors, and a lot of this stuff is not surprising, because people have been saying this for years. For years, people have been talking about the trafficking of children and women, systemic abuse of people, of all ages, both genders, people have been talking about people using their power and their money to commit crimes and to help one another out who are also in a certain income bracket, and doing some horrific things. Years ago, when people would talk about this openly, they would accuse them of being conspiracy theorists. They would, or inciting, you know, unnecessary panic, or doing it for attention or seeking money. They're just trying to bring somebody down, because they're jealous. They will say all kinds of things, but a lot of times they were dismissed. And especially if the person was popular or wealthy or famous or had some degree of popularity, a lot of times people would not listen to them or would accuse them of being crazy. And sometimes people just don't want to believe, you know the worst things that are happening, even though you know this stuff keeps happening again and again. And, at what point are people going to start listening and paying attention? You know, as as things are being revealed about some of the people that are involved in these files and involved in these activities, many people are seeing the heroes in them. And that is upsetting to some people. Some people are having a really hard time with this and don't know how to grasp, because a lot of the people and that they looked up to, or that they held in high regard, are involved in these activities, or some of these people are actually, they actually worship them. As like idolatry. They look up to them, whether they're celebrities or political figures, or um people in religious institutions. People look up to a lot of these people, and they hold them in high regard. They hold these ideologies and political parties and things in high regard, and it's a big part of a lot of people's identity, or what they believe in, or what they stand for. And so when they are hearing that these people that they admire, they respect, they put on a pedestal, are involved in these kind of things, then that is very distressing to them. I know in the last few years, there has been a lot of revealing about um, celebrities and people in high political standings, and political groups, with what happened with um, Diddy in his trial, and several other people who have had similar circumstances and are coming forward. And we also had, the Me Too movement, a few that started a few, I guess, a few years ago, may still be going on. But all of this is happening because people are starting to expose and talk about things. And we're going into a different timeline now, where a lot of stuff that was kept hidden is no longer. And once the light goes on, it exposes the darkness. So that's what is happening now. That's why all these things are coming to the surface, as they say, or coming to the light, because it's the time period that we're in, the timeline we're in. And while this is going on, I want you to think about, if you are feeling distressed over this, on any level, emotionally or psychologically or whatever, I want you to think about, you are have to focus on being your own light in the darkness at this time. Because not only has it been a lot of things have been revealed and exposed in the last few years. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's much more coming, and there's much more that has not been revealed and is still being exposed and revealed. So, with that, you must be your own light in the darkness. You are your own hero or heroine of your own life and your own life story. Focus more on you and your personal and spiritual growth and development, and don't put so much emphasis on other people, especially people that the society around you are telling you to look up to, or to um, hold them as your role model or your guide or whatever, or your leader. You got to look at how can you lead yourself, and being the leader, looking at the leader within you. Okay, focus more on that and less on the people outside of you, because you have to be the hero of your own story. And each and every one of us, I mean, it's okay to have leadership from others, because there's always someone that may know more than you, or about certain things, or leaders that have more expertise and experience in things, and that's fine. But always, when it comes to leaders, you need to keep your eyes on them and watch how they lead. Are they leading with integrity? Are they leading with a sense of purpose? Are they leading with the right intentions for themselves and for you? Or are they a leader that just assumed a title out from brute force, or other people have put them in that place because they serve a purpose for someone else? But what is their leadership style? Are they a leader from among the people, or not? Are they a leader that's actually in the trenches helping and building their community? Are they actively engaged in the community that they say they lead? Because there's lots of leaders out there everywhere. But what's their track record? What do you see them actually doing? What are they doing? How are they doing this? Like, what's their leadership style? Watch that and pay attention to that, more so than the title ascribed to them. That's so much more important, is their leadership style, what they're leading, how they're leading, versus the title, because the title is just that, it's a title. Okay. And we got to remember, folks, this a lot. I've been, hearing a lot of people talk about this in the last few weeks, and in fact, and all this series of events that's been happening in the last few years around the trafficking of people, especially children and adults. We hear a lot of stories about, um, the missing population and what's happening to them. And it's very, very disturbing. If you look at statistics, and I am someone that has been, volunteering on situations when there's a missing person and stuff, and millions of people around the world are going missing, and people are not just disappearing. There's something happening, there's something going on out in the open and in secret. And many of us have heard these things before, or witnessed them, or met people that have experienced them. And a lot of us, um some people still are just not aware. Okay. And we have to recognize and accept that we live in a very predatory society and world. There's a lot of predatory behavior going on. They call them the strong taking advantage of the weak, but strong people don't do that. But there are people that have um in more powerful positions that take advantage of people, or not, I won't even call it taking advantage. They um prey on others. There's predatory practices going on in the workplace, predatory practices going on in religious institutions, predatory practices going on in relationships, predatory behavior is all around us. There's stranger danger. And then what's even worse is a lot of people are preyed on by people they know, sometimes even within their own family. There's the enemies amongst us, they're everywhere. And you have a lot of this going on, and it's going on everywhere. So you can't say that's a this problem or that's that community's problem, because it's everywhere. It's happening at all everywhere at all times. And this predatory behavior is very destructive, and there's so many different levels to it. A lot of relationships are based on that. When I say relationship, that could be a work relationship, it could be an intimate partner relationship, it could be a so-called family relationship. Even some of the organized crime or gangs or whatever you want to call them is based on predatory behavior. It's one group is using, exploiting, abusing, causing pain and suffering to another group, whether, regardless of what that group is. That kind of behavior, excuse me, has been the norm on the planet, and is not a healthy norm, is certainly not a highly spiritual norm, but this is going on and has been taking place for far too long. And this is part of the reason why this great revealing is taking place, because it's showing people, it's pulling the covers off, and it's exposing just how deep the predator and the predatory rabbit hole goes. And the most vulnerable, this predatory behavior is demonstrating the worth of the most vulnerable people amongst us. Okay. And so some of the most vulnerable people amongst us are children. Children are they're innocent. They need adult supervision, they need adult guidance, they need protection from caring adults. And unfortunately, we don't live in a perfect world where there's enough of that. And it's just exposing how people really feel about the little ones amongst us, because all over, the world, the most vulnerable, which are our children and our youth, are being exploited, being abused, being manipulated, and being, ultimately unalived and destroyed by the adults around them, who are abusing their power and their authority and using it for evil purposes. People don't value young people very much. They're being used, they're being abused, they're being discarded. And a lot of this is going on in the open or behind closed doors, and it's not enough being done to stop it, because it's such a rampant, widespread problem. What's being exposed and what's happening is actually represents the destruction. When they abusing these children and the stuff that's happening, it just represents the destruction of innocence, the destruction of purity. And we're not seeing enough justice for them, because look at all the cases that you hear about and see how people have been abused or exploited or neglected when they were children, and when they became adults or someone rescued them, they exposed what happened, and the predators got away with it for so long or too long, or they never saw any justice. And many people haven't. This kind of stuff is being treated, it's not being treated harshly enough. The treatment and the consequences are not harsh enough. This is why this stuff is going on, and why it's so rampant. And we live in a society, in a world, we had to face it, where the vulnerable population is not only being abused and manipulated and exploited, but that they're not valued. They're not valued enough. There are more children that out there that don't have parents than the ones that probably have parents. I mean, they're orphanages everywhere. They're not always the result of um, wars or famine and things like that, which a lot of people would like to believe that. But there's war orphans, there's orphans whose parents, for whatever reason, are not able or capable of raising them, whether they're throwaway children, runaway children, children that have been abandoned, children with disabilities, children whose parents are incapable of caring for them because of extreme poverty or mental health issues. The list goes on and on and on. But there's a surplus, or it seems to be more unaccompanied children out here than there are adults. And because of that, a lot of them are ending up in the hands of very, very cruel people. And there's not seeming to be enough justice for it. I used to be a school teacher, so I have witnessed many things, and I've also, know many firsthand stories about some of the stuff that some of us are just finding out about for the first time. And this stuff is not anything new. And, we have heard these horror stories from survivors for years, and for decades, they were mocked. They were called conspiracy theorists or, troublemakers. They were accused of lying for money or fame, accused of being jealous of the person they were exposing, all these things. And, people tried to make them appear crazy or paranoid, saying that they are spreading panic or fear, but they were telling their experiences and what they witnessed or what had actually happened to them or what they survived. And most of people, a lot of people didn't believe them, or they were persecuted for coming forward, which made them feel a lot of times. I mean, it's really horrible when you are exposing or telling a story about something that happened to you or you witnessed that's traumatic, and to have people say dismiss you or say I don't believe you, or I think you're exaggerating, or etc. And to be vulnerable like that and to need help, and people don't take it seriously or minimize it, that's very, very hurtful, and is very, very unfair. um so we've been, many folks have been distracted by this kind of behavior because of the people involved being someone that others admired, and you know also pointing the finger at other groups, talking about how other groups of people are exploiting, manipulating, abusing young people, or women. And then this kind of stuff, the very perpetrators of this was right in front of us all along. Folks, the sleep spell is over. You all are about to see even more things coming out the woodwork, as they say, and it's going to be even more shocking as the things come out and are revealed. This child abuse and exploitation is a worldwide phenomenon. Child marriages, child labor, the sex trafficking, the organ trafficking, the film, and I don't want to say what kind of films, but what kind of films, industries, all of this stuff, has been going on for a very long time, and people have been talking about it, but it seems like it always just, even if you eliminate one thing, there's still so many more that are still doing it, and then they catch people that are involved in this stuff. And even for everyone, it's like for every one they catch, there's about 100 more. So it's just a really prolific problem. and more I noticed that certain questions are not being asked. I hear a lot of people talking about, the names on these lists, or who was attending certain parties, or who was hanging out with some of these people that have been exposed in the media. But what about the victims? Where are they? What about the survivors? Are there any survivors? If they are, you know what happens, or the people who succumb to these things, what happens to them, and is anybody going to be held accountable for that? Those are some of the questions that I think should be asked and answered, not so much whose name is on these lists and flight logs, and who you know hung around these people that have been exposed and arrested. But let's talk about what happened to the victims, or the people who were, abused and exploited in these situations. I think that needs to be asked. And how many people were involved? Those questions need to be asked. And in what capacity were they involved? And are they going to be held accountable? Are they going to get some consequences? Are they going to be exposed and punished for any wrongdoing that they're involved in? I think those are some of the key questions that need to come up. And while we are witnessing this is a time for us to really ask ourselves, like, what can we do to make sure that we're not a part of the problem, but the solution? Because there needs to be some outrage and some pressure put on people who commit crimes against others, because they really there needs to be more accountability and more consequences, and less slapping on the wrist, and less excuses for why people do the horrible things that they do. There shouldn't be any excuse. And I noticed that some people are more outraged about harm coming to certain groups of people, but not others. And that also needs to be examined and taken into account. And we need to reflect and think on that, because why are certain people upset when things happen to, certain people or certain populations, but not all? Why are we more upset when things happen to one gender and not the other? Why are we more upset when things happen to people of one so-called race versus another, or one social economic level group and not another? Why are certain lives and certain people not held in the same regard, and this, but why we not putting the same level of value on everyone's lives, and just certain groups from certain, whatever? All of that needs to be examined. Those are some things that, these cases are revealing. And why is it that, why we another question we all need to ask ourselves is, why is it that money, how they say money makes the world go around? Why is it that people with money are given passes to do certain things? Or why is it that money seems to have this much power over people? We need to really, really, all of us need to reflect on that and ask those tough questions, like, why the is the sayings, money over power, money over this, money over that, all those sayings that we say. Why? And what are we going to do about those things? When are we going to stop putting money, valuing money over people? When are people going to stop, you know, literally and figuratively selling their souls for money, when we know money is something that is temporary? It comes and it goes. Um, Life is far more important, and then something transient like money. So we need to ask those tough questions, and we need to also ask questions, and that's everyone. We all have to do a lot of self-reflection And during, especially during this time of repentance, think about, have there been some times where you could have spoke up for yourself more or someone else? And some people don't have a voice to speak up for themselves. Some people don't have the willpower, especially if they've been abused or if they've been neglected or exploited. They may feel helpless, hopeless, they may feel worthless. Think about, you know, your own humanity when you see and hear about things that is wrong. What role will you take in that? Will you be a passive observer? Are you going to be complicit? Are you going to be an enabler? Or are you going to be someone to speak up and speak out and help another person or even help yourself if you're in a situation where you're being abused or neglected or exploited? Are you, where do you have the willpower to help and pull yourself out of it, or help another person that's in a dangerous or unsafe situation? And it can be even just a small situation, and doesn't have to be the most extreme or the most acute. And but regardless of what it is, you have to think about and take a stand. A lot of people hear these horrible things and they think there's nothing that they can do about it. And it might not be anything that you can do about things that happened in the past. But if you're ever confronted with things in the present, that you're aware of, you have to take a stand against wrongdoing, regardless of who the person is, regardless of how popular they are or how well known, how whatever. And if you don't have anyone to stand with you, or you feel like you're doing it all on your own, you may be doing it all on your own. You may be that one voice, or you may be that one person that's willing to stand up and stand against Goliath, and speak up and be that strong voice. And that's okay. You have strength, you have power within you. You are a very powerful person, and you may be the one that can empower others and empower yourself. You may have to stand alone on this one, because there are times and situations where you will, when you speak up and you expose the lies, or you expose the deceiver, you may have to stand alone on that, because sometimes other people are not going to support you in that. And you may be called all kinds of names and persecuted for standing up. But are you willing to do it, or are you going to be a part of the problem and be an enabler or complicit? Or are you going to pretend that you don't know because it's too uncomfortable or too messy to or just out of fear? Fear is a big motivator. A lot of people are full of fear, and fear is what guides a lot of people's decisions, their decision making, um, just everything. I know I've had to conquer lots of fears myself, and fear is just that, fear, false evidence appearing real. But nevertheless, it's a big motivator, and a lot of people are afraid to come forward or to stand up or to take a stand against anything because of the fear of loss, fear of the loss of friendship, fear they're going to lose their job, fear their life might be in danger, in fact. So all of these things are some things that we really need to reflect on and think about in this time of great revealing, and why we are in the positions that we're in. And even those of us who are sitting and listening and hearing and watching this play out in front of us, we also have to think about and ask, what role are we playing in this? Are we going to make some things different, or are we just going to sit back and just go, it's a shame that happened, or that was just terrible? What do we intend to do about it? because on a small level, some aspect of this stuff is happening in and around us, and we're aware of. So, with that, I would like us to think about, how to be better and how to treat one another better, you know, and let's focus on ways we can help survivors, talk to and listen to people. Don't tell people you don't believe them. Don't dismiss their stories. Don't ignore them, and help with the healing process. And do not definitely do not become a part of the problem. Stand up, empower yourselves, empower one another, and let's make sure we don't allow this stuff to continue to happen. That's the most important thing. Do not allow this stuff to continue to happen. We need to stand up, stop it, and take a stand for someone, even if that someone is yourself. So with that said, I hope this has been helpful. May do a part two of this with a guest, but let me know in the comments what you think, and I hope that be in you all's hope to be come to, with hope next week when um hopefully next week we'll have another live, and we can take a step further in this conversation, because I think it's very important that we have these kind of conversations, even though a lot of people are talking on this topic. I still think there's some things that we need to examine as a group. And so, with that said, I hope you all have a wonderful evening and enjoy the rest of your week. Peace and love to each and every one of you.